Hey, welcome back to the podcast. I am sitting down at night, the night before this episode is going to go live at 8:06 p.m. to record this episode. If you follow week to week, you probably noticed that there was no episode last week, and that is because life has just been lifing around here. There has been a lot of stuff going on. I had to travel last week for work. I have a sick kiddo and just all the things going on. But I'm super excited to sit down and record this episode because this is one of my favorite episode types to record. This is going to be a case study episode, and I'm featuring my client Katelyn today. And I think that these case study episodes really help you to actually see a real good insight into the actual work that I do with clients and some of the things that I recommend. And it just makes it so much more tangible because there are a lot of things that I'm good at. I'm very good at the work that I do with my clients. I'm very good at helping clients get results. I am not the best marketer. I am not the best at conveying exactly what it is that I do with clients in what I feel like sometimes for some people is like a really easy to understand type of way. And I think that these case studies really help fill that gap and really help me to be able to showcase the good work that me and my clients, I don't take all the credit. I am the guide along the way. I help women find the answers and get to the root of the issues, but they are the ones that are putting in the work and really committing to doing what it is that I'm recommending and following through on that. And then, therefore, they are the ones that, are working hard to get those results. Now, I'm there to be their biggest cheerleader along the way to help them tweak things, answer their questions, hold them accountable, to follow through on the promises that they make to themselves and the commitments that they make. But it is really them that is, doing the work. So, anyway, I digress. So, today's case study, we are starting off again. Her name is Katelyn. This is a client that I worked with about a year ago and had a really great outcome. I'm not going to spoil it right off at the bat, but this was one of those clients that just literally made me jump up and down for joy. So, I'm going to go through this case study sort of the way that I tackle things when I sit down to make someone's result video that I send them when they're working with me. So, the very first thing, and I know I'm not sharing my screen just for privacy reasons, in case I ever do share the video recording of this podcast, which I doubt I'll ever do because to be so truthful with y'all, I'm sitting here in my pajamas. But anyway, just in case. So I start off by reviewing again the person's intake form. And this intake form is pretty detailed because I need to really give someone the opportunity to share their story with me so that I can really understand where it is they're coming from, what it is they're dealing with symptom wise, and what their goals are in us working together. Like, what questions do they have that they want answered? What is it that they think is kind of going on? Or maybe even what things have they tried before that maybe just have not worked or not gotten in the result that they're looking for. So, starting off, the first question that I ask them is, what is your biggest health or hormone concern at this time? Try to list, your top 3 concerns and be specific as possible. So for this person, we were dealing with fatigue and trouble concentrating, having irregular periods, plus some spotting, plus infertility. She had a history, long history, like since she was around 16 years old, of having irregular periods, had been on some various types of birth control. As soon as she came off that birth control, she went back to having spotting in between cycles, almost to the point that she was having spotting nearly every single day. So the doctor was like, hey, we need to go back on the birth control. She did. Then she decided her and her husband were ready to try to get pregnant. She came off the birth control, went several months without having a cycle, tried several different medications, trying to induce a bleed, trying to promote ovulation, and that did not really work. Several more months go by. Then she starts to bleed almost daily again. And at that point, her doctor again recommended for her to go back on the birth control. And she decided that, we've been down this road before. It didn't work then. It's probably not going to work now. I know that I want to, get pregnant, have a family. I really want to dig into this and not just slap a band-aid on it with birth control. So she refused the birth control. She asked the provider that she was working with to do some lab work, and they did some, and they didn't go into detail with her about what they tested or what was shown. She just, got a phone call saying like everything came back and it was normal. So, she then went on to even have a procedure to try to help stop that spotting that she was having since it was happening almost daily. And she said that, it did help for a short period of time, but then it started right back up. And she wanted, to really figure out what it is that's causing this. And then how can she support her hormones so that she could get pregnant? Because still to this point, they had not been able to get pregnant. So the number one goal for her while we were working together was to figure out how she could balance her hormones, learn more about minerals because that was a new concept for her, and then overall just to become healthier. And she said that that was important because she was tired of feeling like crap all the time and not feeling like herself. And if you're someone that's, here in this audience that has struggled with hormone imbalance, I think you can absolutely relate to that. I think that we all can and can remember, either remember what that feels like or know what that feels like because you're still in the thick of it. So then I go on to ask some questions. And I'm not going to go through all the questions that I ask because they're not always pertinent, but I will call out a couple of things that, you know, stand out to me when I'm going over these things and can be contributing factors. So I do have some questions on here about sleep. And one of the things I ask is, do you have problems falling asleep, staying asleep, or with snoring? And this client shared that she did have trouble falling asleep and staying asleep. And right off the bat, what that has me automatically thinking is, I wonder how her cortisol levels are and how her adrenals are. Then we go on down and I ask questions about dietary habits. Like, do you follow any type of specific diet? Do you have to restrict any foods? How often are you eating out? What do you feel like are your eating habits, whether that's good or bad? I ask some questions about how much caffeine a person consumes, if they consume alcohol. Then we get into some conversations about stress, and how you manage stress, how much stress the person feels like they have in their life. Then we get into questions specific to their menstrual cycle, when that started, is it regular, when was your last one, what cycles do you have with that? And one of the things that really stood out to me here, we've already touched on the fact that her cycles are not regular. But then I also ask everyone to rate on a scale of 0 to 10, how would you rate your period cramps? And she rated hers out of 9 out of 10. And then I ask about what symptoms this person, experiences as far as PMS, like leading up to your period. And there's a whole list of symptoms and you just check the ones that apply to you. So she checked bloating, mood swings, headaches or migraines, breast tenderness, low energy, increased anxiety, carb cravings, and diarrhea. And then there is a similar next box that asks about specific symptoms while on your period. So we've got heavy bleeding, spotting between periods, irregular cycles, and skipping or missing a period. And that was like the whole list. She was not on, of course, any birth control at this time that we were working together. She had been diagnosed with PCOS in the past. And then I just go on to ask about, like, are you taking any medications currently? What are they? Are you taking any supplements? What are they? And then I take all of that into consideration before I even look at someone's test results. Because, as I have already kind of touched on a couple different times, the way that someone answers these questions already has me like asking some further questions and thinking along a certain track in my mind. So then if I pull up me and this client did not do Dutch testing. That was something we worked together, had a conversation. We decided we would do the HTMA test first, work on that a little bit, and then add on the Dutch testing later if that's what she needed. And so what we have here is her HTMA test. And when this test came back, I was glad, honestly, that we decided to hold off on the Dutch test for a little bit because there were so many things that we uncovered with just the HTMA test that I felt like we needed to work on first. And I'll just like this sidestep for a second in case you guys have not heard me explain this before. So I always tell people that Dutch testing is great. I love Dutch testing. It's so informative. It gives us the information about what your hormone levels are, how your body is metabolizing your hormones, what your cortisol levels are, and what that cortisol pattern looks like throughout the day. And there's some other things that we get from a Dutch test too, but that's like the main things that we're looking at with a Dutch test. But then the Dutch test doesn't really tell me why the levels are what they are. It's the HTMA test that really tells me what it is that's driving the levels to be what they are. So Dutch test tells us what the levels are. HTMA testing tells us why the levels are off in the first place. And that is why if you've ever asked me like which test is your favorite or which one do you think is most important, then I have 9 times out of 10, nine cases out of 10 told you that the HTMA test is the most important part. Excuse me. And that's the reason why, because we need to know what it is that's causing the problem so that we can really address it head on and fix it. So when I look at this test, you guys have heard me say this before in other case study episodes, I can't go through every mineral level on the test because we would be here for over an hour. And I still want to keep these episodes short. So I'm just going to call out like the big things that stand out about this test. Number one, we have a calcium shell. So calcium is a hard mineral. And when we get too much of it built up and it's in the wrong place, we want calcium to be in our bones and teeth. We don't want it to be in our tissues, essentially. So basically, this calcium builds up and it almost acts like a little hard barrier around your cells. And we call that a calcium shell. And it makes it hard for things to move in and out of your cells because it's like they're hitting this barrier when they're trying to come in or go out. That also really impacts your nervous system. It can almost put you in this, state of freeze. So right out of the gate, I knew we needed to address the really high calcium level. Accompanied right with that, we had a really high magnesium level. Now, you might hear that. And if you're used to looking at levels on blood work, you might think, oh, well, if it's really high, then she had too much magnesium. That's actually not the case when we're looking at an HTMA test. When we see a really high magnesium level, that means that the body is burning through magnesium at a rapid rate and it's using it up. And what we will see is that magnesium level will be high and be high and be high, and then it bottoms out because they've like burned through all of their magnesium stores. So when we see a high magnesium level like that, we actually want to support magnesium. Then this person also had a really high zinc level, which there is a link between your zinc and copper ratio and your estrogen and progesterone. The other thing here is that when we see a really high zinc level, and we do like rule out exposures. So some people are using a shampoo that has zinc in it, which can throw off the test results, but that wasn't the case here. And so when we see a high zinc level like this, it indicates that the person is dealing with a lot of inflammation. And that can happen for, a variety of reasons, but any form of inflammation in the body is going to affect your hormones. So then scooting on down, just to talk about the heavy metal section for a second. Heavy metals are, not something that serve a purpose in our body. They don't really have a job to do. They just really, they're stealing the job of another mineral. We don't need them for anything, and we want our body to be detoxing them as it encounters them. When I look at Katelyn's results here, her levels are very, very low. And a couple of them are so low that the heavy metal cannot be detected at all. And at surface level, you would think that's a good thing. But we have to look at the whole picture and take everything we know about a client into consideration. Given the symptoms and the things that are going on with this client and how little amount of heavy metals I see showing up on this test, and knowing the environment that we live in, even when we're trying to be really careful and mindful of our exposures, that, we still get exposed to so much. When I should see some things being detoxed and I'm not, that tells me that the body is struggling to detox, and that there's actually probably quite a bit of heavy metals that are there and present in the body, and the body is just not detoxing them currently. And the last thing that we look at on the HTMA test here are the ratios. The ratios is where we get insight into different systems within the body. So first thing that stands out to me here is the calcium and phosphorus ratio is very high. That means we have a slowed down metabolism. Next up, we've got the sodium and potassium ratio, and it's very low. You have a sodium and potassium pump on every single one of your cells, which again impacts what can come in and go out of the cell. So when that level is low, that sodium potassium pump is not able to work efficiently. So now with this particular client, not only do we have that pump not working sufficiently, we also have that calcium shell. So it makes it very difficult for things to come in and go out of the cell. And that is important because when our body makes things like insulin or the thyroid hormone, we need it to be able to get inside the cell to do its job. This also is another indicator that this person is going to need support and a targeted plan for supporting detox, because it's also not able to get things out of the cell that we don't want there. The next ratio that we have is the calcium and potassium ratio. This is where we get insight into thyroid hormone. This is not talking about how the body is making thyroid hormone. That's what you get checked when you get a TSH with your, primary care doctor through blood work. This is looking at how can the body get the thyroid hormone that it's making into the cell. Your body can be making enough thyroid hormone all day long, but if it can't get it inside the cell where it needs to be to do its job, then it's not helping you. That's why somebody can go to their doctor and say, I Googled it. I check every symptom off the list of low thyroid. Will you please check my levels? And they're like, yes, absolutely. They get the blood work done and they get that phone call. Hey, your labs all look normal. And you're just like so confused about why. This is why. We call that cellular hypothyroidism. Then the next one we have here, we've already touched on a little bit, is that zinc and copper ratio, and it's very high. And again, like I previously mentioned, when we see a very high ratio like that, we lean towards questioning and thinking about whether the person has estrogen dominance. Now, we could not confirm that without Dutch testing, but we can take that plus the symptoms and the history into consideration and make a educated guess that there's some estrogen dominance going on there. And then the last ratio that I wanted to touch on was the sodium magnesium ratio. And this ratio is like bottomed out. It's so low, you can barely even see it on the chart. This is where we get insight into adrenal health and cortisol levels. So this tells me that this person and her body has been under stress for a long time and is really struggling and really needs support. So, knowing all of those things, her symptoms make sense. And now, because we know exactly which mineral levels and which ratios are off, we know how to support her. So I did want to pull up and just talk through a few of the things that I incorporated into her care plan. And again, I'm not reviewing everything. I am just giving some very high overview, 3 to 5 things that were on this care plan. So first of all, I encouraged her to start mineral baths. Mineral baths are a great way to get in more minerals because you're soaking them in through your skin and you don't have to digest them. Beyond that, we did supplements, and I always hesitate to share like exactly what supplements I recommend because I don't want anyone to hear one of these case studies and it's like, yep, I align with that. I have all those symptoms. My test probably looks the same, so I'll do those supplements as well. Well, we see that to not always hold true. Sometimes yes, but sometimes no. Everyone is very individualized. Their mineral levels are very individualized, and therefore your supplement regimen needs to be individualized to your body and to what your specific needs are. So just keep that in mind as you hear some of these things. And for some things, I'm not even going to give the specifics of what we did for that reason that I just explained. So we did some things absolutely to support the adrenals. Those, like I said, were bottomed out. The body, needs adrenal support. It's very clear. Then we added a supplement to help with hormonal balance and support in general because we are suspecting that estrogen dominance. I will candidly say here that we did not use DIM for this client because I just, for number one, didn't think it was necessary based on the symptoms, and then also wanted to work on other areas first. And then, had we seen frank estrogen dominance on a Dutch test, then we could incorporate DIM. But there were other options and other things to focus on. And the reason, just in case you're not familiar, like the reason that I'm calling that one out is that I see on the internet a lot that DIM is recommended kind of across the board for hormone imbalance. And to be honest with you, I think that's a really irresponsible recommendation to make because if you take DIM and you don't actually need it, you can bottom out your estrogen levels. And although estrogen gets kind of demonized and it seems like it's the enemy a lot of times, it's really not. We need estrogen. Estrogen has like good responsible jobs to carry out in our body as well, and we need it. We don't want to totally deplete it, which is why we don't want to be just randomly deciding we're going to supplement with DIM long term. We added in a supplement that is specifically targeting that calcium shell to help bring those calcium levels down and get the calcium back in the bones and teeth where it's supposed to be. I already mentioned some different things for some magnesium support. We got some potassium support, and then we have support for detox and a binder to go along with that. So that was, let me check my dates here. So this person got their HTMA test done in June, mid-June, probably got their results back from me towards the end of June. And then let's see, we worked together for 12 weeks. There were conversations, going back and forth. And in mid-August, I got a message from this client. We were doing a check-in and she wanted to let me know. She said, also wanted to let you know that we got a positive pregnancy test. We're so excited and cannot thank you enough for your support to get to this point. And that just made my day because, when we very first started working together and she was in this situation where she was spotting every single day, basically, and her cycles had not been regular for many, many years, since she was 16 years old, and really had never, honestly, at any point since she had started to have a cycle, been regular. She had kind of lost hope that she was going to be able to get pregnant naturally on her own. She was already thinking in her mind that she was probably going to have to do fertility treatments and IVF. And we're all thankful that those options are available, and they are necessary in some cases. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But I do want to celebrate this client that she dug in, she did the hard work, she did the investigative steps of figuring out the root cause of her issues, and then put in the work to start to resolve that and was able to get pregnant. And, there's just nothing more rewarding than that, that I get to play a small part in someone's journey in that way to help them grow their family. So I just love that I got to share this story. I hope that it resonates with some of you. I hope that you can kind of see yourself in Katelyn's story. And I hope that if you do, and you're someone that has not reached out to me to talk about working together yet, that you will take that step and have a conversation with me. I'm very no pressure. I'm not going to recommend something to you that I truly don't think can help you. I've got friends I can refer you to. I've got different packages, different offers. I'm not going to just try to, sell you on working with me if I don't think it's actually what you need in order to fix the issues that you're having. So feel free anytime. You can reach me by email. I love a good voice note over on Instagram, or you can just send me a message. But I would love to work with you and support you if, getting your hormones in order and getting those balanced is on your to-do list. Now, as always, if you are new around here, there are some free resources linked for you in the show notes, that if you need a place to get started, that's where I would direct you to go. And then I would love for you to subscribe to the podcast while you're here. That way you never miss an episode. Typically, I release a new one every Tuesday. And I would love to have you back next week to listen. And I hope everybody has a good week, and I will talk with you then.